Hello, my name is Sydney, and I was never really part of the family that raised me. My mom once tore up my medical records in public, screaming that I was letting my sister die. My father stood beside her and called me a selfish mistake. They tried to force me to give up half my liver for a sister who used to laugh when I cried, who told our school I was adopted, before I even knew it was true. But the part that still wakes me at night? The doctor's 6 words, and the way my mother collapsed when she finally couldn't lie anymore. What happens when your whole life was built on a lie, and you were the insurance policy all along? I stayed in that chair, frozen, humiliated, and suddenly very sure that this wasn't just about a liver. The air around me had thinned, as if every breath was borrowed, not earned. Shreds of my medical file fluttered around my feet, landing like discarded receipts of a transaction I never agreed to. My mother stood over me, heaving with theatrical grief, demanding I do the right thing, as if that phrase still held meaning in our household. "Do you think you get to sit there and act like some sort of victim?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the hushed lobby like a dropped tray. "Your sister is dying. Dying, Sydney, and you're doing nothing, absolutely nothing." I glanced around, not at her, but at the strangers watching. A nurse pretending to tidy a file cart, a woman holding her toddler tighter, a receptionist tapping aimlessly at her keyboard. I saw it. The discomfort, the pity, the assumptions. No one came to my defense. That wasn't new. I bent to gather a few of the papers that had landed by my shoes, not out of guilt. I needed them. Proof. Record. Something solid. Something that couldn't be twisted like a bedtime story. My hand shook only slightly, controlled. Mom took a step closer, almost whispering now, as if the drop in decibel made it more intimate, more sincere. "I didn't raise you to be this cold, this ungrateful. We gave you everything." I looked up, right into her eyes. "You gave me what you thought I owed you for." She blinked. And that was it. The first moment of quiet, not agreement, not peace, just the hollow space where her outrage had nowhere to go. Then came the scream. "You're letting your sister die!" It echoed. Actually echoed. And she knew it would. A nurse stood frozen near the vending machine. A security guard down the hall turned his head. Mom's voice carried like a headline. I didn't flinch, I didn't cry, I didn't move. Because I knew this wasn't the first time she performed grief, and I wouldn't be the one to hand her an encore. From behind the glass wall of room 311, Vera lay in her hospital bed, pale but composed. Chemotherapy had softened the lines of her once impeccable makeup habits, but not her gaze. Her eyes caught mine, held them, and she smiled. Not a smile of gratitude, not relief, not even hope. Ownership. That was always her specialty. She didn't mouth anything. She didn't need to. Her look said everything. "I'm still the center. You're still orbiting." A part of me had expected pity from her, or maybe desperation, but seeing that look, smug, satisfied, it did something strange. It unburied something. I stood slowly, gathering what papers I could. My mother's breathing, erratic just moments ago, now steadied as she turned her rage into a martyr's silence. "You'll regret this, Sydney," she said softly, not looking at me. "One day when she's gone, when this family is gone, you'll remember this moment and you'll hate yourself." I tilted my head, not mocking, just studying. "Funny," I murmured. "I remember a lot of moments, and none of them looked like family." With that, I turned, not toward Vera, not toward my mother, not even toward the exit. I walked toward the nurse's station. A few of the bystanders cleared a path. The nurse who'd been closest to the scene met my eyes briefly. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then hesitated. I didn't need her words. I didn't need hers or anyone else's, because everything I had ever wanted to say, every rebuttal, every explanation, every proof that I wasn't what they painted me to be, was already behind me. On the floor, torn, and still, more intact than what they had tried to build as a family. As I reached the far end of the corridor, I stopped, just for a second. The clock on the wall read 10:42 a.m. I remember that detail because I remember thinking, this is when everything breaks, not when they screamed, but when I didn't. I didn't yell, I didn't collapse, I just walked. And the moment my foot crossed into the adjacent hallway, I knew something that rattled me more than anything else that morning. They weren't here to save Vera. They were here to prove I could still be controlled. But I didn't give them that, and I wouldn't. Not now, not ever again. But the next blow didn't come from my mother. It came from my father. I hadn't even gotten a full step past the nurse's station before I felt the weight of his presence. He didn't call my name. He never had, not with warmth, just stood there, broad, upright, like the world owed him respect for still being alive. His shadow landed across the tiles in front of me, and I paused because I wanted to believe he might finally say something that wasn't rehearsed, weaponized, or designed to fold me back into the silence. Instead, he said it like a fact, not an insult, not a scream, just a statement. You're just a selfish mistake. No raised voice, no accusatory finger, not even a twitch in his jaw. That was the worst part. It wasn't said in anger. It was said like he'd believed it for a long time and had simply run out of reasons to pretend otherwise. I blinked, but I didn't cry. I didn't ask him what he meant. That would have given him the dignity of disbelief. Instead, I let the words hit me like wet cement, pressing down but hardening quickly. I wouldn't let them sink too deep. Behind him, Vera's room was still lit like a stage. She hadn't moved. She didn't need to. That little smirk she wore when I entered was still etched across her face like a scar she never had to explain. I stepped aside to avoid brushing his shoulder. That used to feel like defiance. Now it just felt like maintenance of my space, my breath, my body. Walking away, I could feel every year of my life press against my back like a hand trying to push me toward apology. I kept walking. When I reached the water fountain near the family consultation lounge, I stopped, not to drink, just to breathe. And that's when my mind, traitor that it sometimes was, began flipping through memories like old case files. One vacation when I was 10, Vera got the window seat on the plane. I got the middle seat between my parents and the drink cart. Mom said I was too short to need the view. My 16th birthday. Vera got a car. I got a sweater. Dad said, "You don't go anywhere anyway." The college acceptance letter I never got to read because Vera spilled coffee on it before I could open it. She swore it was an accident. Mom believed her. "Be grateful," they always said. "We didn't have to take you in." Even when I didn't know I was adopted, I heard the tone. I knew I was being reminded of a debt I never asked to owe. I didn't realize I'd leaned against the wall until a nurse walked past and glanced my way. Her eyes met mine, brief, unreadable, then kept moving. No one asked if I was okay, and honestly, I was glad. I didn't want a witness for this moment. I needed it to be mine. I pulled my phone from my pocket, hands steady now. I scrolled through my inbox, found the subject line I knew by heart. National donor match results. Confidential. There it was. Dated 6 months ago. From the day I heard Vera was sick. The day I took the test before anyone asked me to. Before guilt was sent to collect. I hadn't told them. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I wasn't a match, it would end there. That logic had clearly been naive. I tapped forward. Entered Dr. Hallstrom's contact. Added Lorelei, my friend and emergency backup for every legal mess I never expected but had learned to plan for. Subject line, reconfirming non-compatibility. For records. Before hitting send, I stared at the screen. At my own name, my real name, Sydney Hale. Not Vera's sister, not Coraline's daughter. Just Sydney. I hit send. When I lifted my head, Dad was gone. So was Mom. I imagined they had moved on to the next round of moral blackmail, or maybe they were meeting with hospital staff to whisper about my emotional instability. They'd done it before. The irony was, they had spent so many years convincing others I was dramatic, fragile, damaged, and I had spent just as many trying to be level-headed, quiet, rational. But now, Now I realized something that startled even me. I didn't want their approval anymore. Their disappointment no longer hurt. It clarified. It proved I'd stepped far enough away from their game to finally see the rules. Back in the lobby, the nurse behind the desk gave me a cautious smile. "Do you need a visitor pass to re-enter the room?" I shook my head. "No, I'm stepping out for a bit." "Will you be back?" I considered her question, not just in terms of today, but ever. "I'll let you know," I said, and walked out the door. Outside, the air had cooled. Early spring in Raleigh had that particular scent, blooming magnolias mixed with city dust and wet concrete. It grounded me in the real world, away from fluorescent lights and old family stories. As I reached the parking garage, I paused. My car wasn't there. I'd taken a rideshare this morning because I hadn't trusted myself to drive. I called another, 5 minutes out. Enough time to do one more thing. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed, "If they ever try to say I refused without reason, here's the timeline. Tested, October 19th. Results received, October 24th. Notified, National Registry confirms I'm not a match." Then, without thinking too hard, I added, "You cannot donate what you don't have. You cannot love where you're not allowed to exist, and you cannot stay where you were never really invited." I saved it. The car pulled up. I got in, gave the address of a coffee shop a few blocks away. Somewhere quiet. Neutral. I needed a moment, not to escape, but to think. They wanted to turn me into a villain. But I wasn't going to play that role. I had my facts, my proof, and soon, I'd have my voice. Not the one that whispered to stay small, but the one that had been slowly clearing its throat for years. They thought I was a mistake, but I was about to show them what a mistake looks like when it finally stops apologizing. A few minutes after I left the hospital's side entrance, I found a bench across the street near a quiet bus stop. I wasn't planning on going anywhere. I just needed somewhere to sit without being watched, without voices echoing inside my chest. I pulled my coat tighter, not because I was cold, but because I needed to feel something wrapped around me that didn't want to take anything from me. That's when my phone buzzed. I assumed it was Lorelei checking in, maybe even a work message. But it wasn't either. Subject line, "Saw the news. Thought you might need this." It was from Olivia Reyes. I hadn't seen or heard from her in nearly 13 years. She moved away the summer before senior year. She was the only person who ever saw what really happened behind our doors and chose not to look away. There was no greeting, just a short message. "I've kept this. Didn't know if it mattered anymore. But I saw your name. I knew it would." Attached were 3 scanned images. The first was a lined notebook page with Olivia's handwriting at the top. "Sydney, after the stairs." Underneath, a short description of what she'd witnessed that day. The scream, the thud, the way Vera smiled as she called for Mom. The second image stopped my breath. It was a Polaroid. Faded, grainy, but undeniable. The outline of a bruise across my ribs. The date written in ink on the bottom. May 16th, 2009. The third was a folded note, my handwriting. I had forgotten it existed. "If anything happens again, and I'm not at school, can you tell Miss Braxton? Please. I don't think I can tell her myself." I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. I wasn't crying. It was just the weight of being seen, all at once, after decades of being erased, not imagined, not exaggerated, not made up for attention. It happened. It was real. I scrolled up and reread the email. Just 3 lines. Olivia never liked drama. She only ever said what needed saying. I opened my voice recorder app and just sat there, phone resting on my knee, letting the air fill with the kind of silence that doesn't sting. And then I started speaking. They always said I was dramatic, that I lied, that I made things up because I couldn't handle reality, but I handled it just fine. I handled it quietly. Too quietly. I paused. A car passed. A woman walked her dog across the street. The world kept moving. They made me think pain was a performance, that unless it left a trail of broken dishes or black eyes, it didn't count. But bruises fade, lies stay. My hands didn't shake this time. I saved the file, named it Statement Draft 1. I opened a blank email and began to write, not to send just yet, but to prepare, to be ready. To the hospital's ethics board. To the legal team, to the media, if I had to. This wasn't revenge, this was clarity. They taught me how to keep secrets, but they forgot that secrets written down have a way of surviving. I wasn't going to let them write my story in pencil again. By the time I stood up, my spine felt taller than it had all morning. I wasn't angry, I was aligned. I started walking. No destination, just moving. That kind of movement you do when your body needs to burn through memory. As I passed the coffee shop on the corner, my phone vibrated again. A text. Lorelei. Still breathing? I smiled without meaning to. Typed back. Yes, for now. I kept walking. By the time I circled back to the hospital entrance, dusk had crept in. The lights inside the building flickered to life one by one. I didn't go back in. I didn't need to. Instead, I pulled out my phone again, opened the email from Olivia one more time, and saved the attachments to a private folder titled, They Knew. Because they did. They knew what Vera was, what Coraline protected, what Merrick ignored. They didn't just let it happen. They orchestrated it, maintained it, used it. They didn't just forget what they did. They counted on me forgetting. But I didn't. And now, I wouldn't let anyone else forget either. I stood there, staring at Vera through the narrow glass pane, her expression still molded in that smug half-smile. She hadn't expected me to find out. That much was clear. The silence between us wasn't quiet. It was loaded. Not with confusion, not with grief, with calculation. I turned and walked away, heading down the hallway just as Dr. Hallstrom waved me back into his office. His tone hadn't changed from earlier, measured, clinical, but his eyes flickered with something else this time, caution. Ms. Hale, thank you for coming back in, he said, motioning to the chair across from him. I sat without a word. I was done exchanging pleasantries. He pulled up a file on his screen and tapped the screen with his pen. Something's off in your file. I'm trying to verify all registry activity, and it shows you were already tested for compatibility 6 months ago. I blinked. Yes, I was. I submitted a donor test last October when I first heard Vera was sick. He tilted his head. The issue is, your mother marked on intake that you hadn't, that this was your first evaluation. My stomach clenched, but my voice stayed steady. Was the result sent to her? He nodded slowly. You listed Coraline Hale as your emergency contact. The National Donor Registry confirmed they emailed the results to her, along with the standard letter indicating you were not a match. For a second, I couldn't breathe. She knew. She had the answer. She read it, and she still dragged me here like livestock, like I owed them my body simply because they fed me once. I closed my eyes. That wasn't a lie. That was sabotage. I want a printed copy, I said, finally. Of that email and the registry's confirmation, I want it for my records. He nodded, clicking through a few screens before standing. Give me a few minutes. I'll print and stamp the documents and bring them back myself. When he left, I let out a slow breath, then opened my phone. The screen glared back at me, filled with texts from Mom, Vera, and even Dad, all unread, all unnecessary. I typed a new message to Lorelei. She lied about the test. She had it the whole time. I wasn't a match. I never was. Seconds later, her reply popped up. Do you have proof? I replied with a screenshot and added, I'm asking the hospital to document it now. Her next message came fast. Good. Send me the full copy. Time to start protecting yourself, fully. The door creaked open again. Dr. Hallstrom re-entered, holding a manila folder. He handed it to me without sitting down. You'll find a notarized statement inside, along with the original registry letter and timestamps showing who accessed it. It's all legally admissible, should that become necessary. Thank you, I said, meaning it. He hesitated, then added, I understand this is a personal matter, but from a medical ethics standpoint, withholding that information wasn't just inappropriate, it was dangerous. I didn't nod, didn't speak. I just stood and left. I passed by Vera's room again, and this time, I didn't glance through the window. I stopped right in the doorway. She looked up from her phone, still in bed, IV lines trailing from her arm. Her smile was smaller now, more measured. "You know I'm not a match," I said, my voice soft but anchored. Her mouth twitched, but no words followed. "You always knew," I added. "Did you think I'd keep bending forever?" Still nothing. Just a blink. One slow, stunned blink. I stepped away before she could respond, walking with more resolve than I had since this circus began. At the elevator bank, I pressed the button and waited. I stared at the soft glow of the downlight as if it held secrets I hadn't yet uncovered. When the doors opened, I stepped in. Alone. I wasn't ready to leave the hospital entirely. Not yet. I headed down to the small atrium cafe tucked behind the pharmacy. It was nearly empty, save for a young couple bickering quietly at a table and a nurse sipping tea by the window. I ordered a coffee I didn't need and sat near the far corner, opening the folder once again. Page after page. Stamped, signed, everything I needed. I started drafting an official statement, not just to the hospital, but for the legal record. I, Sydney Hale, was previously tested for organ donor compatibility with Vera Hale in October of last year. The test results confirmed I was not a biological match. These results were sent to Coraline Hale, who deliberately withheld them from both me and the treating physician. I am making this formal statement to confirm that any implied refusal to donate was based not on indifference or cruelty, but on a lack of compatibility, information my family had but chose not to disclose. I reserve the right to pursue further action if this information is used to coerce, shame, or defame me in any form. It was clean, direct, honest, and it was mine. I emailed the draft to Lorelei, attached copies of the documents, then powered off my phone. Just for a little while. I needed the quiet, because even though they lied to me about everything, I was the one who had to live with the pieces. They didn't just manipulate me. They manipulated the system, the records, the expectations. But now, for the first time, the paper trail didn't favor them. It favored me. And the silence I'd worn like armor for years, it was no longer a shield. It was a weapon. I didn't wait for Vera to speak. I didn't need to. That blink told me everything. She hadn't expected me to find out. Not about the test, not about the email, not about anything. She thought I would do what I'd always done. Take the guilt, swallow the pain, play the part. But not this time. I stepped away from the doorway and made my way down the corridor, past the elevators and toward a quieter wing. I found a spot in a corner alcove where the hospital had set up a few chairs and a water dispenser. The lighting was dimmer there, tucked away from the traffic of nurses and family members buzzing between rooms. My legs finally gave out as I lowered myself into a chair and placed the manila folder, still warm from the copier, on my lap. I felt the shift in my body first, not rage, not even sadness, just a clarity that made everything else quieter, like static cutting out. That's when she appeared. A nurse, young, maybe late 20s. She walked over, hesitating. "You okay?" she asked softly. I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. She placed the cup in my hand, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she said. "Even if they scream." I looked up. Her eyes were steady. She wasn't guessing. She knew. And just like that, something reset inside me. Not everything, not all at once, but something. "Thank you," I said. My voice cracked. She stood and walked away without another word. She didn't linger. She didn't wait for recognition. Just did what no one else had done. Acknowledged the mess without asking me to clean it up first. I sipped the water. It was cold, real, and I held on to that sensation for exactly 2 seconds before I heard the sound of determined footsteps. They were close, familiar, Coraline, and Merrick. Of course, they moved like a two-person storm, her face flushed, his expression unreadable. She had a clipboard in her hand, and I knew what was on it before she even lifted it. Consent forms. Where the hell have you been? Coraline hissed. Her voice was low, sharp. We've been looking for you. I stood slowly, placing the empty cup on the seat beside me. I needed air. Merrick didn't speak, just stared. Like always. She shoved the clipboard toward me. Sign it. No. Her eyes widened. Sydney, don't do this. You're her sister. I shook my head. I'm not. And you knew that before I did. Her hand trembled slightly. This isn't about DNA. This is about family, about love, about decency. I stepped back. No, it's about control. It always has been. Merrick's hand moved suddenly, not violent, just fast. He grabbed my forearm. Coraline stepped forward with the clipboard again. Sign it, she said. For your sister. For your soul. That's when I snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. Touch me again, I said, locking eyes with Merrick, and I will press charges. You think that clipboard protects you? It doesn't. I have proof now. Real proof. He let go. Instantly. A nurse nearby, maybe alerted by the tension, appeared from around the corner. She glanced between us. Everything all right here? She asked, voice calm but firm. I nodded. I'm leaving. Coraline turned to the nurse. She's trying to abandon her sister. She's making this about herself. The nurse looked at me, then back to Coraline. That's her decision. If she needs a patient advocate, we can arrange it, but you don't get to speak for her. That shut Coraline up, at least momentarily. I turned and walked away, the sound of her sobbing beginning to fill the hallway behind me. Not grief, not fear, just the performance she thought still worked. I made it back to the hospital lobby and found a small seating area near the front windows. I sat down, opened my phone, and forwarded every document I had. Test results, registry timestamps, a summary of what had just happened. I CC'd the hospital ethics board, their legal team, and Lorelei. I added one line at the bottom. I did not refuse. I was never eligible. They knew. They lied. And they tried to force it anyway. I pressed send. Then I turned off my phone, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. Not to them, not to anyone. This wasn't about defending who I was. This was about documenting who they were. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I spent the first half pacing the living room of the apartment I was renting month to month near the hospital. The blinds were still open from earlier, city lights leaking in through the glass, painting long shadows across the hardwood floor. By 3 a.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table, the folder from the hospital spread in front of me, highlighter in one hand, pen in the other. I wasn't their daughter. I was their contingency plan, their leverage, and now I had something they didn't expect. Paperwork. By the time I returned to the hospital in the morning, my steps felt slower, but each one landed firmer than the last. I went straight to the front desk and asked to speak with Dr. Hallstrom again. He saw me 15 minutes later, his expression unreadable as he invited me back into his office. I've reviewed the file, he began, careful, professional, but not cold. There's something you need to see. It's unusual. He turned his screen to face me, a scanned copy of a form, hospital letterhead. My name typed neatly at the top. Medical power of attorney. Signed, Sydney Hale. Dated 4 weeks ago. I frowned. That's not my signature. He didn't look surprised. It doesn't match the one on your intake forms or your registry test. But the document was submitted by a family member during Vera's readmission. I could feel my teeth clench. Who submitted it? Your mother, Coraline Hale. Of course. A forged document, used to claim I'd already given consent. Probably so they could fast-track whatever guilt campaign they were planning next. Or worse, authorize something without ever needing my signature again. I asked for a printed copy. He handed it over immediately. This is going in a complaint, I told him, with the hospital's legal team. And with my lawyer. He gave a single nod. We'll cooperate fully. I've already started notifying administration. I walked out of that room with the document tucked under my arm like a weapon, and I didn't wait. Back in the visitors' lounge, I sat down and snapped a photo of the forged document. I opened an email to Lorelei, attached the photo, and typed just one line. They forged my consent. This just turned into something bigger. Before I could even hit send, another message popped up. From her, need me to call the press yet? Or still hoping they have a soul somewhere in there? I smiled. Dry, bitter. But I smiled. Let's start with the ethics board, I replied. Then let's see what burns first. I hit send, and then I stood, turned toward the elevator, and pressed the button that would take me to Vera's floor. She was awake when I walked in. Sitting up slightly, flipping through a magazine she clearly wasn't reading. Her expression didn't change when she saw me. You knew, I said, my voice quiet. You knew I wasn't a match. You saw the results. She didn't deny it, didn't even blink. And yet, I continued, you let them drag me in here like livestock. You watched them tear me apart in the hallway. You let them scream that I was letting you die. She gave a small shrug. You showed up, didn't you? The audacity in that sentence. The calculation. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to lie. She just needed to wait. I came because I thought I could still believe in something, I said. Not because of you, certainly not for them. She tilted her head, resting it back against the pillow. You're still making it about yourself. I took a step closer. Not aggressive, just to be sure she heard me clearly. I sent every document to the board. I have the original registry results, the forged power of attorney, the timestamps, your text history. I didn't just come for the fight, Vera. I brought the receipts. Something flickered across her face then. Not fear, just annoyance. Like I was an inconvenient knot in the middle of her carefully tied ribbon. As I turned to leave, I said one last thing. You didn't win. You just delayed the truth. I left the room and didn't look back. Downstairs, I made a second set of emails, one to the hospital's compliance department, one to their legal office, and another to Lorelei again. Each one carried every document, every line, every date. By noon, the hospital responded with an acknowledgement of receipt. They would begin an internal investigation immediately. The email ended with this sentence. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take ethical violations seriously. I stared at that line for a long moment, because it wasn't just about ethics, it was about dignity, about not being turned into a tool because someone else thought your body should be an extension of their regret. By 3 p.m., I started drafting a legal affidavit, a formal statement under oath. I wrote it cleanly, without metaphor, without rage, just facts. I included everything. The lie about the test, the forged document, the manipulation. And then at the very end, I added one line that wasn't required, but it was mine. This is not a daughter's rebellion. It's a woman's refusal to be erased. If they wanted war, they should have picked someone who didn't already survive one. By the time I stepped out of the elevator and walked back toward the main lobby, the hospital felt strangely alive, buzzing with the kind of curated urgency that only appears when cameras are involved. I knew something was happening before I saw it. The hush in the air wasn't about illness, it was about image. Through the glass partition separating the main hallway from the media room, I saw the podium. A small banner hung behind it. Community Gratitude Ceremony, WakeMed Medical Center. Coraline stood tall behind the microphone, clad in her usual navy blue blazer. Merrick was next to her, posture stiff, chin high. A live video feed of Vera played on a monitor beside them. She was reclined in her hospital bed, an oxygen line under her nose, smiling faintly. I hadn't been told this was happening. No one mentioned a press conference. And yet, there they were, our family's picture-perfect trio. I moved closer, just outside the line of sight, and listened. We are deeply grateful for the anonymous donor, Coraline said, her voice composed, every syllable soaked in performance. Because of their generosity and the support of this incredible medical staff, our daughter Vera is alive today. Anonymous. My stomach clenched. She continued. This experience has reminded us of the strength of community, of compassion, and the power of love within families. No mention of me, Not even a sideways acknowledgement. They had rewritten the story. Again, Merrick stepped forward. It's easy to point fingers during hardship, but true character shows in silence. We want to focus on healing now. Not division. I watched myself disappear in real time. Not a name, not a breath. The photos on the easel showed Vera smiling with Merrick at her side, Coraline holding her hand during a treatment, hospital staff posed in the background. No Sydney. They were burying me in front of a crowd and doing it with applause. I turned, walked briskly toward the west hallway, and waited near the side exit. When the cameras shut off and the room began to clear, I saw Coraline step out first, holding her phone, waving to someone off screen. I didn't wait. I approached her directly, my voice low but unmistakable. You knew I was in the building. She didn't even flinch. You forfeited the right to be part of this family. The cruelty wasn't even veiled anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened my message thread with Lorelei, preparing to send her the link to the live stream recording I'd just captured. Coraline's eyes darted to the screen. What are you doing? Sending evidence, I said plainly, because you just erased me on camera. Her hand moved before I expected it. She reached forward and smacked the phone from my hand, hard. It hit the floor with a loud crack. People turned. A nurse gasped. One of the volunteer staff standing nearby took a step forward. Coraline stared down at the shattered phone screen, chest heaving slightly. Her voice quivered, but not with fear. Rage. You want to ruin everything, don't you? I looked at her, not with fear, not with sadness, with a calm I didn't know I had left. You already did that for me. I crouched slowly, picked up the pieces of my phone, screen spidered, casing bent, and turned to the security guard now hurrying down the hall. He stopped beside me. Ma'am, are you all right? I nodded once, then held up what remained of the phone. Please log this as evidence. I'll be filing a restraining order today. Coraline's face paled just slightly. Not because of guilt, because the performance was over. The audience wasn't clapping anymore. The security guard looked between us. Do you want me to escort you to the administration desk? No, I said. I'll handle it. I walked past Coraline, my broken phone cradled in my hand like something sacred, something final. The hallway had never felt longer. When I stepped outside into the sunlight, I didn't rush. I sat on the bench near the main entrance, pulled out the hospital-issued visitor tablet from my tote bag, and logged into my backup email. Lorelei had already sent me the clip from the press conference. She'd edited it, labeled the file. Sydney erased, WakeMed press event. I typed, they erased my name, but I was about to engrave the truth in stone. I hit send. The conference had ended, but I hadn't. Not yet. I walked straight from that bench outside the hospital toward the main building, not even glancing at the volunteers still rearranging chairs from the press event. The air buzzed with aftermath. Polite handshakes, small talk, someone laughing too loud because they didn't know what else to say. I kept walking, through the automatic doors, past the security checkpoint, and into the elevator without slowing my pace. I pressed the button for the administrative floor and waited. When the doors opened, Dr. Hallstrom was standing at the end of the corridor, holding a folder. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something heavier than confusion, something like regret. Thanks for coming up, he said. I didn't want this buried in another inbox. He led me to a private consultation room. No windows, just a table, 2 chairs, and a subtle hum from the overhead light. He sat first, opened the folder. There's a genetic marker conflict, he began, folding his hands on the table. We reran everything to be sure, twice. I didn't speak. I already knew what was coming. You are not biologically related, he said. At all. 6 words, that was all. And yet, the room tilted slightly under me. I laughed. Not from humor, from the way something in me cracked so wide that air got in. That explains everything, I said, barely above a whisper. He nodded slowly, as if offering space for whatever came next. But I didn't cry, didn't gasp. I just sat there, letting the weight of it settle like dust on an old box finally opened. "Thank you," I said. "I'll need all the official documents. Everything. Print and digital." "You'll have them," he replied. "Do you want to talk to someone?" "No," I said. "I'm going to talk to everyone." It was already in motion. I left the room, the folder tucked under my arm, and made my way to the main floor. By the time I reached the media corridor, my heart wasn't racing anymore. It was locked into rhythm, like it knew this was the moment I'd been walking toward for years. Security at the side door shifted when I approached. One of them raised a hand, hesitating. "I'm here to speak," I said. "It won't take long." He looked at the badge still clipped to my blouse and stepped aside. Just beyond the door, I saw Lorelei waiting. She didn't smile, just gave a single, knowing nod. "You sure?" she asked. More than I've ever been. The room was still lit, the press still packing equipment, but the mics were live. A few cameras hadn't shut off yet. I walked to the podium. No one stopped me. I placed the folder down, opened it. "I won't take your time," I began. "Just your attention." Every movement in the room paused. "My name is Sydney Hale. You didn't hear that name during the ceremony today, but it matters." I held up the first paper. "This is the test result from the National Donor Registry, dated October. It says I am not a match to Vera Hale." I lifted another. "This is the forged consent form submitted in my name, without my knowledge." And another. "This is a message admitting that Vera knew I wasn't a match, that she hid the result, and that my mother, Coraline Hale, deliberately withheld it from the hospital." Flashes went off, phones lifted. I was adopted. I was never told. And I was brought here under the assumption that I could save someone who spent her entire life watching me bleed and calling it drama. A ripple of noise moved through the crowd. They tried to use my body to fix a lie. They erased me from their story, thinking no one would notice. I took one last breath. I don't want revenge. I want no more silence. I stepped away from the podium. Behind me, Coraline fainted in her seat. The thud was audible even over the whispers. Merrick tried to stand, to speak, but the murmurs drowned him out. Someone from the hospital staff rushed to Coraline's side. Vera's video feed, still playing on the back screen, froze, then went black. A reporter called out, "Do you want justice or revenge?" I turned back, just once. "Neither," I said. "I want to never have to explain myself to them again." And I meant it. I walked out, folders still in my hands, past the stunned audience, past the blinking cameras. No one tried to stop me, because they couldn't. It was a quiet Thursday morning when I finally stepped back into my apartment. No cameras, no doctors, no voice raised in guilt. Just stillness. 1 week had passed since the press conference. The internet had already grabbed it, twisted it, and recycled it into headlines. Adopted daughter exposes forged consent in organ donation scandal. Family secrets unraveled on camera. Hospital ethics board launches investigation. I didn't read the comment sections. I didn't need to. Coraline had collapsed at the press event and was placed under medical watch that same evening. Heart strain, they said. Stress-induced. A part of me wondered if it was real or another layer of performance. Merrick hadn't been seen publicly since. No official statement, no apology. Not that I expected one. Vera was discharged the day before. No social media update, no well-lit photos captioned with Bible verses, just digital silence. For the first time in my life, I was louder than all of them. That morning, I sat on my small balcony with a cup of black coffee, staring out at the slow rhythm of downtown Raleigh. It was the first time in a long while I didn't feel watched. Mid-morning, I got a call from the hospital's legal office. They confirmed that my liver had never been a viable match for Vera's condition. Not marginal, not partial, not even close. Even if I had said yes, it wouldn't have mattered. It was never about saving her. It was about controlling me. I thanked them for the call. Politely, calmly. Then I sat back in my chair and let out a breath I'd been holding since I was 13. Maybe earlier. Later that afternoon, I got another message. this time from Vera. Can we meet? Just the two of us, please? I stared at the screen for a while before typing back. Where? She sent a reply. Hospital Garden, the South Path, 5 p.m. At 4:45, I walked into the garden alone. The sky was a gentle blue-gray, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or not. Vera was sitting on a bench beneath the birch trees. No makeup, no camera angle, just her, small in a hoodie and hospital-issued socks. She didn't stand when I arrived, just looked up and gestured beside her. I didn't sit. After a moment, she spoke. They only kept you in case I needed something one day. The words hit me like cold wind, not because they surprised me, but because of how calmly she said them. I always thought you knew, she added. No, I replied, but I always felt it. She nodded. Just once. We didn't fight. There was nothing left to wrestle for. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said quietly. Good, I answered, because I'm not offering it. Another pause. Wind brushed through the leaves, making them chatter. But I hope you find something better than this, I added, because what they did to both of us, it doesn't deserve to follow us forever. She didn't cry. I didn't expect her to. I walked away without saying goodbye. Some endings don't need a curtain. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office and picked up the paperwork for a legal name change. Sydney Hale. I kept the name I had built for myself, not theirs, not one given in obligation, mine. Downtown Raleigh looked different walking through it that afternoon. The buildings were the same, the people the same, but I was not. I stopped by a print shop and signed the last page of the form. As I stepped back onto the sidewalk, I whispered to myself, I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. And the truth? It was always mine. They just tried to bury it under obligation. That night, after dinner, I sat at my desk and found a small envelope among a stack of forwarded mail. No return address, just a postmark from Arizona. Inside, a handwritten note. Hi, Sydney. I saw your story. I'm adopted too. I didn't know I could say no either. Thank you for showing me it's okay to speak up. I'm 17. You gave me something I didn't know I was allowed to have. Choice. No signature. Just, from someone who now knows she's not alone. I smiled, folded the letter gently, and slid it into the top drawer of my desk. Not in the file labeled evidence, but in the one labeled keepsakes. Because now, it was no longer proof of pain. It was the beginning of peace. Some families collapse under the weight of their lies, but I built my life on the truth, and that's more than enough. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is the one we've always suspected, that love can be conditional, and family can fail you in ways that leave invisible scars. But silence doesn't have to be permanent. Sydney's story reminds us that speaking up, even when it's painful, is often the first step to healing. Have you ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to protect you? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true, emotional stories like this one. You're not alone, and your story matters.